Let's get ready to rumble!
Hey, y'all, make some noise if you think the Earth is flat! Make some noise if the Earth is flat! Make some noise! If you think NASA's full of shit, make some noise! Make some noise if you think the Earth is flat! Make some noise if you think NASA's full of shit! Make some noise if you think the Earth is flat! Make some noise if you think NASA's full of shit! If you think the Earth is flat, make some noise! If you think NASA is full of shit, make some noise! If you know damn well no one ever walked on the moon!
Oh, this just got real, y'all. Uh-oh. I'm gonna tell you, looks like we've got ourselves a code red science emergency. So I'm gonna have to do something I rarely do. I gotta hit the science panic button.
Science Emergency Defense Program initiated. Science Emergency Defense Program initiated.
Oh my God.
Science Emergency Defense Program initiated.
I'm trying to eat my dinner. I got your distress call. Is everything okay?
No, Neil, everything is not okay. This BS about the Earth being flat is getting out of control. Can you please help us?
Hold my sandwich.
Oh, sure. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Here, you take that. Here. You want? Oh my God.
Put your coat back on, Grandpa. Nobody wants to see your saggy old man tits or your bulging belly full of undigested GMO sandwiches.
The Earth looks flat because, one, you're not far enough away at your size. Two, your size isn't large enough relative to Earth to notice any curvature at all. It's a fundamental fact of calculus and non-Euclidean geometry. Small sections of large curved surfaces will always look flat to little creatures that crawl upon it. But this...
I completely agree, Neil. The Earth will always look flat to the tiny creatures that crawl upon it. And when us tiny creatures send up weather balloons over 100,000 feet high in the air, guess what, Neil? It still looks flat. You know why, Neil? It's because the Earth is flat.
But this whole thing, it's just a symptom of a larger problem. There's a growing anti-intellectual strain in this country. It may be the beginning of the end of our informed democracy. Of course, in a free society, you can and should think whatever you want. And if you want to think the world is flat, go right ahead. But if you think the world is flat and you have influence over others, as would successful rappers or even presidential candidates, then being wrong becomes being harmful to the health. Isaac Newton, my man, said, if I have seen farther than others, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. I get an amen. Woo. 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 When you stand on the shoulders of those who came before, you might just see far enough to realize the earth isn't flat. And by the way, this is called gravity. The earth isn't flat. And by the way, this is called gravity.
Sorry, Mr. Tyson, but you are flat out wrong. The fact the microphone left your hand and fell back to the earth is a product of its weight and density. The microphone is more dense than the air in which surrounds it, so therefore it fell back to the earth. Much like if you were to jump off of a building, you would fall to the earth because your body weight is more dense than the air in which surrounds it. At the same time, you can take a tiny magnet and overpower this magical, mythological force of gravity. You see all these metal objects that should be falling towards the center of the earth? They're actually being overpowered by a tiny magnet. So the same force of gravity, which holds trillions of gallons of water stuck to a spinning ball, are simply overpowered by a tiny magnet. And at the same time, if you fill a balloon with helium, it will rise. It will overpower the forces of gravity. This is due to buoyancy. Because the helium in the balloon is lighter in which the air that surrounds it, it then rises. The helium can overpower the weight of the balloon itself and rise. If you were to drop a balloon without any helium in it, it would fall back to the earth. But once you put helium into the balloon, its contents are lighter than the air in which surrounds it, and it can then overpower the weight of the balloon and cause it to rise. The fact that something falls and the fact that something rises is due to density and buoyancy, and nothing else. It is actually very simple. Whereas gravity causes objects to fall towards its supposed center of the earth. The fact that the center of the earth has never been proven causes the entire concept of gravity to fall apart, as the deepest any humans have ever dug down is in fact only 8 miles deep. Being we have only dug down 8 miles deep, we have never reached any theoretical core, and therefore the core is just that, simply a theory. Thus, if the molten core has never been proven to exist, then that means the center of the earth has also not been proven to exist. If the concept of gravity is constructed around a supposed attraction toward the unproven center of the earth, then that means the entire concept of gravity itself is baseless and purely hypothetical.
So you spin, when you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out.
Yeah.
Gets wider in the middle. And so Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning. And it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate. And officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped. 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 Pear-shaped.
Really, Neil? Pear-shaped, huh? Pear-shaped. Bulging. I don't see any bulges. I don't see any pear-shapedness, do you? In fact, if you were to measure each one of these circles, you would see that they are perfect circles. No bulging, no oblateness, no pear-shapedness whatsoever. In fact, just about all the images that I've ever seen were perfectly round circles, Neil. The only one who ever brought up the Earth being anything other than a sphere is you. The only person I've ever heard call the Earth a pear or an oblate spheroid was Neil deGrasse Tyson. Before that, no one ever said that in my whole life that I had ever heard, until Neil said it. Funny thing is, when I go to Google Earth, it's a perfect circle too. So where does this bulging actually begin and end? Where does it take place? Does it only take place on the magical pear in your mind, Neil? Because none of the images that we've been shown have any oblateness or bulging or pear-shapedness whatsoever. So maybe you should get your eyes checked, Neely boy.
How do we know the Earth is not flat?
We don't. It's flat.
Okay. Glad we established
that.
Yeah, I see what you did there. You told everybody the truth. You know it's flat. I know it's flat. He asked you if it's flat, and you told him it's flat. Now you're going to do that thing where you say you're just kidding and that the Earth is actually round because you're a professional actor. But you and I both know it's flat, and that's why you just told everybody the truth in plain sight that it's flat, because it's flat.
So no, here it is. If you are small, as we are as humans, and that is the entirety of and that is the source of your understanding of the world in which you live, then of course the world looks flat. That's not any different from being a child watching television and is presuming that the people you see on TV know you.
They don't know me.
Well, if you're a little child, you think they do know you, because you are the center of your own universe.
That last statement fell about a mile short of making any sense whatsoever, Mr. Tyson. Now, when we use our senses that we were created with, we can see that the horizon is horizontal. Think of that. Horizon, horizontal. They don't call it the curvizon, do they? That's because no matter how high you go, the horizon is always flat and horizontal, and it rises with you to your eye level. This would be impossible if the Earth was a sphere or an oblate spheroid or a pear. Because if the Earth was indeed a sphere, an oblate spheroid, or in your case, a pear, that means as you gained altitude, you would have to look downward in order to see the horizon. However, this does not match our everyday experiences. If we were to get in a hot air balloon together, Neil, and we were to go up there, the horizon would be flat and level. Hey, speaking of level, have you ever been to the ocean, the sea? They call it sea level for a reason. They don't say sea curve, do they? In fact, it doesn't matter whether you're at sea level or on top of Mount Everest, whether you're looking out the window of an airplane, or if you send up a balloon 100,000 feet above the Earth, that horizon is flat. Hard evidence that the Earth is not curving in any way. Not the same as a child thinking they know someone on TV. Oh, and look, what's that? That's a hot spot, folks, on top of the clouds made by the sun. That means the sun is very close, not 93 million miles away. But we'll get into that later.
Well, we have many lines of evidence to show that Earth is round, including Apollo photos of the round Earth.
Yeah, that's where I have a problem, Neil, is because those Apollo images, well, they come from the government. That means I have to blindly trust men who work for a government agency, because NASA definitely is a government agency. I have to trust the government agents who supply us with these images that these are actually authentic. My problem is when I hold these images under scrutiny, they fall apart. For instance, if we were to look at these Apollo images of the Earth from the moon, many of them depict the Earth as being a tiny ball. Just like the moon is just a tiny ball from here on Earth, right? But isn't the Earth said to be much larger than the moon? They say the Earth is way bigger than the moon, right? Like in this NASA image of the dark side of the moon, we see a comparison of the Earth being much larger. So if we were to stand on the moon, as those men claim to have done, and we were to zoom in, and again, this is a NASA image. Now let's imagine ourselves standing there on the moon looking at Earth. How is it ever going to be a tiny ball up in the sky, like in those Apollo images? How are you ever going to see the Earth rise? It would take up your whole view. For those of you not following along, the very top image is the NASA image of the dark side of the moon. If you were standing on the moon, it would take up your whole view. The image to the right, the bottom right corner, is an Apollo image of the Earth from the moon. Think about it, folks. For those of you who think I'm not being genuine, you can Google Earth from Moon NASA and you can find these exact images right away. This is an authentic NASA image of the Earth from the moon. And if you Google dark side of the moon NASA, you'll find that other image I was just using, and you can trace it right back to their website so you guys can see this is also said to be an authentic photo of the moon passing by the Earth. So again, if we are to put these two authentic photos together, how exactly would you ever see the Earth rise? How exactly would the Earth not just take up your entire view? When you put their images together and you hold it under scrutiny, the whole thing falls apart like a crappy, flimsy card house, folks. There's that tiny Earth from the moon. And hey, that's a funny looking spacecraft. I think I see tinfoil and scotch tape. Hey, let's take a closer look at that lunar module. You know, the spacecraft they say they landed on the moon in. That's it, folks. That's the spacecraft. Here's a better angle. Now, I don't know about you, but I think I can see tinfoil, scotch tape, and some curtain rods. So you have to ask yourself, at what point is this a lunar module or a homeless tweaker shelter? And could it stand up to the elements of outer space? I mean, look at this thing. They stole our tax dollars to make it. NASA claims they went to the moon in that pile of crap. I don't know about you, but I definitely want my money back. And if you look at the boot, it doesn't even leave an impression on the moon. But the astronauts who weigh a lot less, well, they leave perfect footprints. They say that the module weighed about 10,000 pounds, but it didn't leave an imprint, a blast crater, and no dust settled on the boot whatsoever. Now let's watch this thing take off, and you guys tell me how realistic this looks. It's gonna leave the moon, y'all. There it goes, leaving the moon. Now when I ask, who was left behind to tape it? They say, it's a robot camera. A robot camera that they control from Houston is filming it leave the moon. So the top part of what I showed you before, which looked like a homeless tweaker shelter, the top part of that apparently leaves the moon, and it doesn't fly back and land on Earth. Oh no. You actually have to believe that that thing rendezvous, joins up with the lunar orbiter, connects back together and that the men inside there get out of there and then back in the orbiter and then returned safely to Earth. But of course, you don't get to see any of that happen. You just have to trust the government that it happened. Just like you have to trust a professional actor like Neil to tell you to trust the government that those pictures of the Earth are authentic.
The only reason I reference that, of course, is you got into kind of a battle on Twitter about that a while back, earlier this year.
Yeah, it wasn't a fair battle when you know you're right and you know the other person is just completely regressed in their thinking.
You're right, Neil. You're so far outmatched. This ain't even a contest. I got to do other things to keep myself occupied because I can't lose with the truth on my side.
So, and I would have left it alone because I don't have time for this until I saw him saying, I use physics and math to show that Earth is flat. Not, those are fighting words. Okay, if he says he's invoking physics and math, let me see where he claimed to do so.
All right, Neil, we'll start with the math and then we'll work our way to the physics. Now, if the Earth were indeed a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, that would mean that it would have to curve at 8 inches per mile when you square the mile. Now, if we are to do this math, it's very simple. The first mile, you would just do 1 times 1 times 8. That would give you 8 inches of curvature drop in your first mile. Now, your second mile, you would go 2 times 2 times 8, which would equal 32 inches. Then you would divide by 12 to convert to feet once you have your inches figured out. Now, if we are to look at Lake Pontchartrain Bridge in Louisiana, it's 23.8 miles long. Now, for a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, this bridge would have to have 377 feet of curvature drop in it. However, it's flat and level and no curve is anywhere to be seen. Go to Louisiana and drive across it yourself. You'll see it's totally flat. Now to physics. The natural physics and mechanics of water is to find and maintain its level. And if you were to ever try and measure any curvature on any body of water whatsoever, you would find that there isn't any. Curvature cannot be measured. And furthermore, if the Earth were a ball covered in water, that would put many rivers flowing impossibly uphill. Now, if you look at the Great Lakes system profile on a flat Earth, it makes perfect sense. Now, on a ball Earth, each one of these sections would have to be curving in order to make the ball. Now, when we combine math and physics together, we can perform experiments which prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Earth is not curving. Now, this experiment is one of my favorite globe-busting experiments, and it comes from the YouTuber Jenna Frito. She performed an experiment where she zoomed in with her P900 on the Rogers Center from over 30 miles away. The Rogers Center is only 282 feet tall and should have been covered up by Earth's curvature. Enjoy, folks. This is proof the Earth does not curve, and proof Neil is full of crap. There it is. We can clearly see the Rogers Center from 30 miles away, and the Rogers Center is only 282 feet tall. I want to thank Jenna Fredo for performing this experiment. You debunked the globe, Jenna. Congratulations.
So how do we know the Earth is not flat?
We don't. It's flat.